It might be easy to forget about, but great racehorses are truly a rare case. You may be shocked to learn that it's not as easy as reaching 300 stamina by the Satsuki show. Of the thousands of foals who are born every year, only around half of those horses even get to participate in a race. Even less win a race in general, and a scant selection win a graded race. It takes a lot of luck and a lot of hard work to even be able to achieve anything in horse racing, and that's even if you get to the track in the first place. On a trip to America, Japanese trainer Shigetada Takahashi purchased a foal of relatively unknown horses Stutz Blackhawk and Lady Bend Fager, primarily because it also bore the blood of Never Bend, an American horse who had won 13 of 23 races and had produced several impressive horses, including the 1971 Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe winner Mille Reef, as well as Riverman, who was the leading sire in France in 1980 and 81, who also appears in Narita Taishin's pedigree chart through his sire Rivlia. For the low price of $30,000, or 4.3 million yen at the time, which equates to around $75,000 in today's money, this as of yet unnamed foal would then be imported to Japan at 2 years old. Never Bend being in your pedigree chart doesn't exactly justify that price, so there was some skepticism over Takahashi's purchase, which was called into further question when the horse got to Japan. The foal already had a history of health issues, allegedly suffering from encephalitis and leg injury issues in his early life. But once he arrived in Japan, he began suffering from an unexplainable and critical fever. It was so serious that when vets came to check on the horse, they told the staff bluntly to be prepared. After 1 week, however, the horse's symptoms completely vanished, miraculously coming back from these life-threatening conditions. And that would be the basis of the horse's name, K.S.Miracle. Now we know where the miracle in his name comes from, so you might be curious as to where the KS comes from. Solid question. K.S.Miracle didn't exactly go from being a frail, sick horse to a huge, strong one like in the case of Toho Jackal, for example. His constitution was still incredibly weak. It would take him until his 3-year-old year of 1991 to participate in his first race, which means he missed out on the normal 2-year-old debut races and instead would make his introduction in a maiden race. He entered one such race in Niigata as the favorite under relatively new jockey Kiyohisa Saiki. K.S.Miracle had a late start in this race and found himself toward the very back, hovering around 8th place. He did have a very strong burst of speed when trying to overtake from the outside though, and managed to make up good distance but landed in 2nd place, a half length behind Paris Harley, with Takahashi commenting that the horse didn't seem focused at the time. K.S.Miracle wouldn't have to wait long for his next opportunity, as he would race in a 1400 meter maiden race a mere 2 weeks later in early May. Just barely the second favorite, this time he took up a position toward the front but was in competition with 2 other horses. In response to this, he dropped back, went outside, and left them in the dust, winning by a commanding 8 lengths. Side note, this race also included a horse called CB Daughter. You'll never believe who sired CB Daughter. There was no rest for K.S.Miracle as he found himself in the pre-op Warabi show only a week after his maiden race victory. The plan was to win here and then set K.S.Miracle up for the G2 New Zealand Trophy a month later in June. He managed to take the lead early on in this race, but according to his jockey, due to the slow pace making him restless, combined with the fact that he started goofing off when other horses started racing around him, he wound up coming in 2nd place. This was twice now that K.S.Miracle's immature nature had cost him a race, as since the start of his career was so delayed, he had a bit of a mischievous streak going. He often came off as childish and frivolous. For example, on the farm he loved to play around and eat a metric ton of bananas. Don't we all? Because of this loss, it was determined that it was probably a better idea to take a little break to assess K.S.Miracle's condition, so the plans for the New Zealand Trophy were shelved. As part of a plan to help K.S.Miracle focus up, Kiyohisa Saiki would find himself out of the jockey's seat for further races and would be replaced with a much more renowned jockey, Katsumi Minai. Minai had previously jockeyed both Tamamo Cross and Aguri Cup to various G1 wins and would eventually go on to most notably jockey Triple Crown racehorse Narita Bryan. In June of 1991, K.S.Miracle entered another pre-op race, the Ishikari Tokubetsu. This would be his first 1200 meter race, but once again entered as the favorite. He was late out of the gate again, but managed to catch up easily, ending up toward the front by taking an inside path. He followed this trajectory and snatched the lead, never giving it back and taking first place not only by 4 lengths but also in record time, finishing almost a full second ahead of Samson Queen. At this point, K.S.Miracle started drawing attention as a strong racehorse, which may have played a part in making him far and away the favorite for his next race, also in June, the pre-op Moiwayama Tokubetsu. We're learning a lot of race names today, aren't we? For the second race in a row, K.S.Miracle got off to a late start but climbed back effortlessly toward the front. He wasn't in the lead, but decided to take it at the 4th corner, winning by a crazy 9 lengths, a second and a half before second place ended up being contested by 3 horses finishing with the same time. Following his most recent victory, the plan was that K.S.Miracle would finally enter the graded race scene, but since he had raced on a busy schedule of 5 races in a little over 2 months, he returned to Hokkaido to pasture for the summer. He wasn't able to train for the whole summer due to construction issues on the farm, so he ended up resting for the most part until around the middle of August. He did retake the gate exam since this was pretty obviously one of his biggest issues at this point though. Imagine K.S.Miracle's finishes if he learned how to get out of a gate. Whoa. 3 months after his last race, in September of 1991, K.S.Miracle's first graded race came in the form of the G3 Centaur Stakes, in which a victory would provide priority entry into one of Japan's premier sprinters races, the Sprinters Stakes. He entered as third favorite behind Sekiya Keenan winner Nifty Nice and graded race regular Senryo Yakusha. K.S.Miracle's former jockey Kiyohisa Saiki would also be jockeying Spainland in this race. Despite being third favorite, Takahashi expressed nothing but the utmost confidence in his horse. K.S.Miracle was able to maintain a third place position for a good chunk of the race, but toward the end fell further and further back, landing in 13th place, just 3 lengths ahead of last place and almost 2 lengths behind Senryo Yakusha. So much for the odds. How K.S.Miracle got such an uncharacteristically bad finish here is a bit of a stumper. Was it because of his weight having increased from his last outing, his preparation time being cut short, the left-handed track? Who knows? In any case, this surprising finish was a problem for K.S.Miracle's staff. Without the necessary prize money won, they wouldn't even be able to think about entering the Sprinter Stakes. His staff quickly entered K.S.Miracle into an open race a month later, the Opal Stakes. K.S.Miracle would have to face several of the horses he'd competed against in his previous race, including Husky Honey, Senryo Yakusha, Nashville City, and Yamano Hitter, who was being ridden by Yutaka Take. Even after his previous crushing defeat, K.S.Miracle once again was entered as the favorite just above Yamano Hitter, and this time he stayed around the middle of the pack, which wasn't his typical MO unless he got off to a late start, which he didn't in case you were curious. Come the last 400 meters though, he took off past the other horses in the race and won in his second record-breaking time in his career, 3/4 lengths ahead of Samson Queen, which is the second time she's finished second to K.S.Miracle now. Keeping up with the trend of a crazily busy racing schedule, K.S.Miracle found himself in his toughest challenge yet just 3 weeks later, the G2 Swan Stakes. Not only was this the highest level race he had entered to this point, but the competition was on a completely different level. Here, K.S.Miracle would have to face off against multiple-time graded race winners, including the favorite Daichi Ruby, who had most recently won the Yasuda Keenan among 2 other graded victories to this point. Additionally, Daichi Ruby's unpredictable rival and Takamatsu no Miya Keenan winner Daitaku Helios would also enter this race, as well as stalwart graded racer Bamboo Memory, who had wins in 4 graded races to that point. The quality of competition landed K.S.Miracle as 5th favorite, the lowest he'd ever been, finding himself behind all 3 of those racers and Hankyu High winner Joe Rohrig. I figured it out. Even Takahashi expressed an uncharacteristic lack of confidence at the prospect of K.S.Miracle winning the race, saying a top 5 finish would be enough for him. Even so, he raced around the 6th place position throughout until making his move late in the race, surpassing his opponents but being doggedly pursued by Daichi Ruby, who had the lead taken from him. The pair of them passed the finish line with the same time, in fact, a record time, but the winner was clearly K.S.Miracle, setting his 3rd record time in under a year from his debut. Also, fun fact, the competition here was so fierce that 8 of the 16 runners in this race passed in a time under a minute and 21.4 seconds, which is where the previous record was. Although, it was changed to 1400 meters only in 1983, but that's not important. What was important was that K.S.Miracle had achieved his first graded victory and solidified himself as one of the most intriguing sprinting racehorses currently running. One who was once viewed as an immature horse was now assessed as a focused and energetic threat. He was also reported to be in excellent condition health-wise. Having won the Swan Stakes, the initial plan was to rest and partake in the Sprinter Stakes in a month and a half's time in December. Instead though, K.S.Miracle would participate in his first G1 a little earlier than expected, entering the Mile Championship 25 days later, with Takahashi citing the horse's excellent condition at the time as the reason for the change in plans. K.S.Miracle hadn't run in a 1600 meter race since May, which I know feels like a long time ago at this point in the video, but that was only 6 months ago, albeit also 6 races ago. Despite being in a crowd of primarily mile distance specialists, K.S.Miracle entered as the 2nd favorite behind Daichi Ruby once again, who took the 1st favorite spot. They would again be joined by Daitaku Helios and Bamboo Memory, among other competitors like Swan Stakes participants Asian Wizard, My Superman, and Daiyu Saku, as well as new faces like movie star and famous Cinderella Grey character Osaichi George. K.S.Miracle entered marking Daichi Ruby, who had gotten off to a slow start, which of course meant they were both way further behind than they were used to. Daichi Ruby managed to make up lots of ground toward the middle of the race and was leaving K.S.Miracle behind, but both made their move to close in on the horse who had been leading since the start, Daitaku Helios. Neither would be able to close the long gap though, as Daitaku Helios would take first, 2.5 lengths ahead of Daichi Ruby, leaving K.S.Miracle in 3rd in his first G1. But we take podium finishes around here. This brings us to the race that everybody has been waiting for. The race that K.S.Miracle has been working to for months. The 1991 Sprinters Stakes. K.S.Miracle at this point had a month's rest following the Mile Championship, and this time found himself the favorite over Daichi Ruby. Joining them would be familiar faces like Passing Loot and My Superman, as well as a new face in Yamanin Zephyr. Due to a scheduling conflict, Katsumi Minai would be replaced as jockey by Yukio Okabe, who had been racing for almost 2.5 decades to this point, most notably being the only jockey to ride Triple Crown winner Simbali Rudolph. He'd also taken horses we know like a Gurikep and Bamboo Memory to G1 victories. K.S.Miracle was reportedly acting strange before the race, seemingly agitated for whatever reason, and though his staff, including Takahashi, acknowledged the horse's heavy schedule over the last several months, they were confident in his conditioning and fully expected a victory in the Sprinter Stakes. K.S.Miracle started the race toward the middle of the pack on the outside and started closing in on the front and the back half of the race, when all of a sudden, K.S.Miracle made a push up to the front of the race, but strangely he started falling further and further behind. Where Daichi Ruby went on to win the Sprinter Stakes, K.S.Miracle couldn't finish it. Something was clearly wrong, and upon evaluation it was found that his left front leg had multiple fractures in it, and with no possible treatment available, K.S.Miracle was euthanized only 8 months after debuting at the age of 3 years old. The actual cause of K.S.Miracle's injury was and still is debated. To critics and fans, the main point of blame fell onto the fact that K.S.Miracle had an incredibly heavy workload for a horse with prior health issues. The race schedule K.S.Miracle had in his career wasn't necessarily unheard of, but the sentiment was that 10 races in 8 months is an aggressive strategy to say the least, especially in K.S.Miracle's case. Others have pointed fingers at Okabe, who, as a jockey who hadn't ridden K.S.Miracle before, may not have known how to handle him. It could have also very well been a freak accident, since there was no indication of any injury despite K.S.Miracle's behavior before the race. We'd later learn that this behavior included getting violently worked up for a few nights just before the Sprinter Stakes and a lack of focus. Unfortunately, the true cause may never be known. K.S.Miracle remains one of the biggest what-if horses in Japan's history. Had he won the Sprinter Stakes, Takahashi had eyes on entering him into the following year's Milers Cup and travel to America for the Breeders' Cup. The Sprinters' World would get a shot of adrenaline in it, as Yamanin Zephyr would go on a tear following the Sprinter Stakes, joined by 2 other prolific sprinters in Nishino Flower and Sakura Bakshino. The question that would remain unanswered is whether or not K.S.Miracle, who would set 3 records in his first 8 races and who would overcome insurmountable odds to become a racehorse in the first place, could have held his own in that environment. Though he had a tragic end, K.S.Miracle would go down in history as a horse who would reach the pinnacle of speed, one who had conquered his own limitations for as long as he could, and one who would inspire many people despite his short time in their lives. Several fans who were in attendance for the Sprinter Stakes, for example, would become veterinarians after witnessing what happened in K.S.Miracle's final race, hoping to prevent the same thing from happening again. If this isn't proof that not only K.S.Miracle, but horse racing in general can leave an indelible mark on people, then I don't know what is. Perhaps the truest thing that could be said about this horse, though, is that he lived up to his namesake and made miracles happen time and time again.